Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz represents the state of Florida, and he joins us tonight. Congressman, thanks a lot for coming on. So this is no defense of Rod Rosenstein, who's never struck me as someone I would trust personally. But does it seem odd that both the New York Times and Andy McCabe clearly would like the president to fire Rod Rosenstein? So what does that tell you?
Well, we're only going to find out the truth if we're able to get Rod Rosenstein under oath to explain what he said and the context. There appears to be no denial that he talked about wiretapping the president. So now we're supposed to believe the insurance policy wasn't really an insurance policy. The secret society didn't really exist. This is just sarcasm when you're talking about taping the president. And when they said, we'll stop him, they didn't mean they'd stop Donald Trump. They meant that America would rise to its greatest virtues. So I guess we can either believe the lion Department of Justice or our lion eyes.
So, again, I don't want this to come off as some sort of defense of permanent DOJ personnel, whom, as I've said many times, I would not trust. On the other hand, consider this. So Andy McCabe apparently is under investigation by the U.S. attorney in D.C. based on that IG report from DOJ that said that he leaked and lied about it. So he could be indicted. If that's true, and I think it is, then no one at DOJ could call Andy McCabe a liar without invalidating the case. In other words, the prosecutor can't call the person he's charging a liar before the case, or a judge will throw it out. So maybe they can't actually deny this for that reason.
Well, there were other people in the room, Tucker. I've had sources who've said Scott Schools was in the room and that he's the other anonymous source cited in the New York Times piece. So let's bring Scott Schools back from his Uber job. Let's bring Rod Rosenstein down. Why not put them under oath and ask them? And if we're if we're afraid to do that as a Republican Congress, then we are derelict in our oversight responsibilities. We got to find out if they how appropriate. Let's assume it was a joke, Tucker. How appropriate is it for the Deputy Attorney General to be joking about wiretapping the president while he's overseeing an investigation of the president in front of his colleagues and subordinates? Roseanne Barr got fired for a joke, and frankly, I think Rod Rosenstein might too.
Interesting. So I want to ask you, speaking of the Congress's obligations as an oversight body, these documents pertaining to the Russia investigation, particularly the FISA warrant that allowed the Obama administration to spy on Carter Page, we were promised that they would be declassified. And apparently the permanent bureaucracy has prevented that from happening. It's deeply frustrating to those of us who believe in transparency and openness and the public's right to know the details of what its government is doing behind its back. Can anything be done about this, or is it final?
Well, I think that there were some who convinced the president that since the Inspector General is already looking at this content, that if the Inspector General finishes, it will all come out anyway. That's frustrating for guys like us who want to turn all the cards face up on the table. But I do have great confidence that Michael Horowitz will get to the bottom of this and will issue a fair report. So we may have to wait a little longer than we would have liked, but I don't think that the deep state's going to be able to hide behind their inappropriate redactions for too long.
So let me just ask one final question. And I think you're absolutely right. Everything in the end becomes known. Nothing is hidden forever. So when these documents are finally released to the people who own them, which is to say the American people, and it turns out that none of the things that were redacted were actually questions of national security, but merely butt covering by federal employees, will all the people who lied about it get punished? Because they should.
Well, they've never been punished before. When we had text messages redacted just because Peter Strzok was friends with a judge or Andy McCabe bought a $60,000 conference table, there were no consequences. There was no punishment. We just sort of threw our hands in the air and lost trust in their ability to do their own redactions. But time and again, bureaucrats redact information that's embarrassing to them, that the American people have a right to know. And that's why we've got to continue to fight for Congress to have a robust oversight role.
Nicely put. Congressman, thanks very much for joining us tonight.